Hello, everybody. Travis Pfeiffer here with my best gang of guys. We are coming at you with the Gang Plays Casual week 3 of the League of Light. As always, I am joined by Stephen Riley. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Travis. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And we've got our returning fan favorite, Bradley Shanlin. Bradley, how are you doing?
Hey, doing fantastic. This week is turning out better than last.
Ooh, that's always a good start. And of course, getting the van himself, Max Ritter. Max, how are you?
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, it's good to see all your smiling faces.
I'm good.
So this is only 4 weeks long, so we're over halfway through. Week 3, how did it treat you guys? And was this week important? Did you need to win to get in, or what was you? Because you guys were all kind of at the top of your list, right? So maybe you had some wiggle room.
Yeah. I was undefeated going into this.
Yeah, I was same. I was undefeated going into this week.
Look at you guys.
Yeah, so I mean, we had 2 more games. I scheduled the first one relatively early with Serena, Princess Boohead, and then my other second game ended up dropping. So I got a free win out of that, so I was 5-1.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like we had quite a few of those, maybe not even just in our pods, but overall. So there's some chatter. I heard people like, well, shoot, maybe I should just wait till the end of the week to play because people might just drop out and I'll get a free win.
My partner or my opponent on Sunday couldn't make it, so he took the loss on that one.
Gotcha.
I faced both of my opponents.
Did you? Okay, so Max actually got to play first. That's awesome. Okay, so Riley, you said one of yours dropped. So you just played Serena. How did that go? What did you play?
So actually, the person that ended up dropping wasn't able to play that second game. I posted in my little Discord chat asking for suggestions on what to build. And John B's like, hey, you should build an Onion Knight deck. So I built an Onion Knight deck, which hindsight, I don't know. I like the Onion Knight card because when I was testing it out, it actually worked fairly often. I could get that trigger to go off relatively consistently. Yes, the brand new one, the Opus 13 one, or if it goes to the break zone, you can replay another Onion Knight.
Oh yeah. I always forget about that part. I always just think of the action ability.
Exactly. Everybody thinks of the action ability, so it's actually kind of interesting because you can have like a little loop going. So if you played cards like Kusith, I had it in the deck, or if you played like Luminous Puma, you could theoretically let Onion Knight go to the break zone and then cast Kusith or do a Luminous Puma and bring back that same Onion Knight and play it back to the field.
Oh, nice.
So you could consistently loop that one Onion Knight if you really wanted to. But beyond that, I think I played, I want to say maybe 10 Onion Knights total. So I played 2 of the Opus 10 starter that when it deals damage, draws a card, searches for an Onion Knight. And then the Opus 3 Sage, and then our Opus 1 Sage, and then Opus 4 Legend Wind Onion Knight. And the Wind Legend Onion Knight kind of synergizes with the Lightning Sage Onion Knight. It has a little special and stuff, and searches out.
Change.
Yeah, the old job change. And I did that a few times actually in the game. I think to kill off a Magissa, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
But other than that, I play other cards that just tried to dump as many Onion Knights into my break zone as possible. So like Magus Sisters was in there. And then I also threw in Fenrir and a couple other like Sarah Mobius and Scarmiglione to kind of just synergize with the stuff. So it was kind of just a list of generic good cards with Onion Knights in there. So I know we always joked about like discard mannequins where you play a bunch of mannequins and you just discard them for good cards. That's kind of what was going on here, but with Onion Knights. But the Fire and Wind Onion Knights performs actually super well.
Nice. So I'm guessing you said Magissa, so I'm assuming you were facing Slammerize.
Oh yeah, the Slammerize for sure.
How did it fare?
That's always a well, and I ended up losing. But it was really close. The Ishtola that I had in the deck really put in some work, I think, both of those games.
Mm-hmm.
But I got the Onion Knight special, or the action ability, I think, off I think at least once in one of the games and probably one other in game 2. They were close up to a point basically, but otherwise it felt like it's a fun deck regardless. So I kind of enjoyed it. It's just got like basic Earth Wind synergies. The only thing I changed on there was I had to play Cosmos instead of Chaos. And so I just played one copy of Golbez just to search out the Cosmos if I really needed to.
Yeah.
But between Tyro and Shantoto, there was enough color fixing to kind of get the Onionite down consistently and be able to cast the action ability in the same turn. So, but other than that, it's pretty fun. I'll probably keep playing it and toying with it and seeing what I'm going to do with it. But it's a pretty fun, simple deck, I think.
See, and that's the type of deck that when you take to your locals, you can tell your opponent, now, hey, you're going to need a lot of tissues because I am playing with a lot of onions here. So you might start crying, all these onions.
Oh, God.
Gotta be.
I did have a question for you, Stephen. So you played the Magic Sisters. How did that treat you?
Surprisingly well. People aren't playing too many sacrifice mechanics, so I mean, it was really just a nice little chump blocker that could just search out an Onionite and dump it into the break zone. So if I saw another Magic Sisters, I could just discard it if the other one was on the field just to get the ability again. But otherwise, it was just a nice little 4-7K chump blocker against really aggressive decks, and sometimes I put in points of damage, but it was really just utility there just to dump Onionites. So if I hit them into the EX burst, it was even better because then I could just search and dump those when I needed them.
Nice. That's a good question, Max, because I know those girls fell out of favor. Kind of almost, I feel like as soon as Opus 10 started, they were prominent in Opus 9, and then right after that, people were just like, nah, no longer interested for whatever reason.
Yeah, they're useless. They're on the way.
Yeah.
Flavor of the month.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically.
They just got in and out. Well, no, that sounds awesome. Hopefully we can see some more Onionite stuff coming from you in the future. So, Brad, did you play 2 matches this week, or you played 1?
Unfortunately, only 1. My opponent on Sunday wasn't able to make it, and just gave me the win for it.
Gotcha. Well, that was an easy win. So, folks, if you haven't watched it yet, I have posted the video of Brad's other match. I was lucky enough to cast it. It was a very good match, very back and forth. I know Steven saw it as well.
Yeah, I watched it. It was pretty crazy.
I've got some pretty hype reactions because there's some stuff that happened that I wasn't expecting. So go check out that video before you hear us talk about it here. But Brad, tell us about
Link
that
below.
match. Yeah.
I was actually facing... I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. You guys watch it. Can you fill me in real fast?
Oh, what his name was? It was, I know in the Jellyfish Discord, he's known as like Warrior of Sylvia or
Warrior of Sylvia.
Something like that. Yeah.
I ended up playing his Warrior of Lights deck, and I was breaking out the deck I talked about last week. Our Lord Has Returned, focused mainly around Zed.
Mm-hmm. Is that your favorite card? That's gotta be like your favorite card, right?
It's my favorite card. I found it on FFTCG one day. I'm like, wow, this card looks really cool. I want to make a deck around it.
I think if I remember correctly, we were testing for a tournament in Kansas City at Collector's Cash, I think the night before, and he's like, I'm just gonna jam this card into the deck, and then he did, and then he just stuck with it forever, kind of like how he's still stuck in like Opus 6. He's like, Zeid's never leaving any of my decks.
Yeah.
It was pretty great.
It seems like he'd be decent against Ferris though, because Ferris has all those attack triggers, so if they're forced to like ping him multiple times, they gotta junk their hand for that.
And the best part is the hidden ability where you just pay 1 ICP and buff them up by 1,000 power. So people will like either take the block and try and trade a block into it. And I'm like, okay, pump him up. Your guy dies.
Yeah.
So that's always fun. But game 1, I believe I was able to win with Shantoto.
Yeah, I remember he committed a pretty big board, and then I think on the cast I'm like, well, let's just ask her to get Shantoto, and she just wiped him out.
Drop it like it's hot, clear the board. I was able to stabilize from there. And then game 2, we had a similar occurrence where I think I cleared the board and then had Zed down and swing. And then his turn, he played Krill and then brought back my Zalaira, the Death Sphere, and then broke my Zed. So that kind of hurt a little bit in the chest there.
As Zed is falling into the break zone, he looks at Zalaira's like E2 Zalaira.
And the worst part is I wanted to drop my own Krill to be able to use his Hecatear and then force him to discard because of it.
Yeah.
But man, he just one turn ahead of me.
So you kind of surrounded him with like a kind of a storm-based deck, right? You had Locke and Althea and Shantoto and Lael, all that stuff.
Yep, a lot of protective. A few board wipes with the fact with Shantoto being able to bounce it with Althea.
Yeah.
So I was actually able to pull that off this week, which we'll talk about next week, obviously. But the But the deck itself is pretty nice. It's a little slow at times just because you need to either build your backups or you need to drop boss monsters immediately to answer their cards. So there's a lot of color fixing with what Stephen said before with Tyro and Chantoto, so you're never without cards. And the addition to Norstalin, which was a great addition, great, can't think of the word, advice from Stephen Riley, actually, to put that in the deck. Yeah. And that helps a lot with getting the backups you need early.
It's got all your colors.
Like you the only reason you wouldn't play it is if for some reason you have a defiance of like, I refuse to play this on principle, because you cannot deny just how strong that card is. And it has so many targets too, which is great. So I want to ask you, I noticed you put Neo X Death in there, but you didn't seem very committed to like jamming him out turn one. Obviously that's the prevailing like meta thing to do, is just jam him out turn one. He can still be a threat on his own if they don't have an immediate answer. Is that kind of more what you were looking at him for?
Yeah. So I actually run one copy of Fellow Thanos in this deck as well to try and support the boss monsters. So I'll try and set up for it first by dropping Fellow Thanos and then dropping the threats behind it.
Yeah.
But in that match, I just didn't have a chance to do so. And I think I'm still learning the deck itself, being like my fourth playtest with it. Yeah. So I'm still figuring out all the good combos, and definitely dropping Neo X Death early feels like the pressure's on immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and his Warrior of Light deck, had you done that, which I mean you would have had to draw it, of course. I don't know if he would have had a way to answer that, because the really only version of removal it seemed like he had in that deck was like Ferris triggers, and he doesn't want to have to choose it 1,000 times.
I mean, he had Ophelia, so
that is true. Ophelia does.
He could have dropped that, but I feel like he would have had to have a lot of Warriors of Light in hand with Ferris, not including that. So if he would have had that, there's probably no way he would have come back from that, an early one anyways, unless he saw the Philia and stuff. But the Fel Thanos is interesting, though. I mean, did you ever get to use that in the matchup at all?
Not this matchup, but again, next matchup we'll have some stuff to talk about.
Awesome. I love that. That card's very interesting. So we're going to do a quick side note before we get to Max, because I'll spoil the ending of Brad's match. His opponent went wide with Warriors of Light. Brad countered with Chantoto, but Brad was on 6 damage, so he can only take one more point. And his opponent had no backups. So you would think Brad's like in complete control, right? So he starts building up resources. He put out Ochus. He's ready to just grind this guy out who's got no backups. He's just top decking at this point. And his opponent got Philia, and it cost him his whole hand to do it, and he was on 2 damage. So he puts down the Philia, board wipes, and when Philia deals him a point of damage, it hits Belias the Gigas, hasting the Philia to go in and finish the game off. Craziest thing I've ever seen. Check it out on the stream, because I go bonkers when I see it. However, it was kind of like, it was easy for me as a caster because I wasn't, but I could tell how disappointed Brad was, because he had this feeling of, which is true, that he had no control over that. Like there was literally nothing he could do about that. And when we played in person this week, Stephen and a couple other friends of mine, we talked, EX Burst came up, and that has come up a lot lately, EX Burst. So I want a quick side topic with you guys. How do you feel about these EX bursts and moments like that where, I think Belias on an EX burst is a totally fair card, but at the same time, it's like, wow, that really sucks to lose that way. Like there's literally nothing Brad could have done to stop that, because you can't respond to these bursts. So little round table, give me some thoughts on that.
Well, to start off, I actually had Edward in my hand. So if specials were able to counter EX bursts, being spell speed 3, I would have been able to counter that and stabilize from there. But I think EX burst, it's a lot of luck with these EX bursts, but being able to counter them would really create a whole new level of strategy in playing.
Are you in favor of that, Brad?
You know what? I'd be happy to shake things up and try and figure out if you're able to respond to that.
All right. I know that would be controversial. Max, what do you think?
I think that EX Burst is a tricky thing, and they really just need to focus on like what they put EX Burst on. I mean, that's the whole Tyro debate of like why he's so good is because they put EX Burst, and especially when you have cards like, I mean, I've been asking for like an Axstar type card for like 5 opuses now. I'm like, it'd be so cool to be able to use your damage zone and stuff. But I also think that they need to be careful of what they make in EX Burst, because I mean, Axstar is only going to get better if they keep putting EX Burst on really good cards. Like, even though like when Steven made that Axstar deck, that wasn't my initial first thought. My initial first thought was, well, let's just jam a bunch of good EX bursts into a deck. Like let's do Yasmat. Let's do like all these. They're not necessarily. They're not. It's not really meant to be cohesive, I guess, but it's just like you have so many options. When you're hitting like 40 EX bursts in a deck, you're bound to hit at least one of them that's really good.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of like what Brad's saying, but at the same time, I think that like I do like the ability to like know that like they are swinging in for damage, and like there has to be like some sort of thought of like, okay, is there like something that is there like when you swing in with your attackers, like swing in with certain way like forwards first and otherwise. I think that's part of the game and part of the like the reason. It's like, I mean, I've lost games because I swung with the wrong person before. I mean, it happens, and that's where you learn to like do new like learn to think about the game in a more I wouldn't say like competitive way, but just
strategic.
A strategic way.
What about you, Stephen?
Kind of along the lines of what Max originally said with like cards like Tyro. I like the EX burst mechanic. I think it's a good comeback mechanic. So if your opponent gets really far ahead or has a really strong turn, if they're not playing Shadow Lord or Wall or anything like that shut off EX burst, at least choosing ones, you have an opportunity to come back. So either it's going to build some sort of level of card advantage for you, or it's going to clear some forwards off the board. Both of those are going to be good in like any matchup that you hit them in, just about. But again, I think cards like Tyro and stuff, like Tyro is already such a good card. It color fixes, it searches out a forward, and it, on top of it has an EX burst. Yeah. I think people would play Tyro in majority of the decks anyways, even without the EX burst. But now people, well, at least maybe not right now because Fenrir is kind of running around a little crazy, but people were just jamming 3 Tyro in there just because it was an EX burst. And then when you hit it, it's like, hey, I'm going to go search out my win condition or some other forward that's going to get me back into it. And it felt really bad. But I think you were talking about this with Kyle Peters on his. He would test without the EX bursts.
I remember hearing that.
And I think that's a good gauge for a lot of, I guess, competitive players and stuff, that you'll really see how strong your deck is without those. And then everything else is just bonus on top of that.
Right.
But I kind of like it. I like the fact that you can't respond to it. So it's going to get around cards like Fel Thanos and Alua and things like that have shields and stuff. That's a unique sort of mechanic. But also, again, along the lines of what Max was talking about, it adds a dynamic to the game where separate super skilled players between skilled players, especially with kind of being conscious of what cards they would have in their opponent's deck, what EX burst you can possibly run into in this sort of category. But to also kind of, I think just EX bursts are super fun to deal with, especially now with cards like Axstar and stuff. So kind of like exactly what Max said, actually. I built a deck specifically to get Yasmat into the damage zone just so I can Axstar to see what I can do with it. It's pretty nice just playing a 4CP reactivate everything. That's always fun. But I hope they pull back on a lot of the cards, or at least make it glaringly obvious why certain cards have EX burst and other ones don't. So I like Tyro definitely should not, but like 7 CP Odin has a distinct advantage over other Odins and stuff. That's in the EX burst, and you could pick that card over something else.
I just wanted to piggyback off of what he said with certain cards, because like just for example, like three cost searchers, like why does King of Burmecia have an EX burst but like Banana Man doesn't? Like, you know, it's stuff like, it's like, why do certain searchers get EX bursts and other ones don't? And I don't know if that's just like because of the targets in the deck themselves. Yes.
It's the targets, and specifically speaking, categories are more broad in general than
I guess that's
jobs
fair.
are. So most job searchers like Mena searches ninjas, and then King or BMEC are typically going to be EX burst or something similar. Same thing with like 3CP Zac backup that hits a job soldier on EX burst that pulls back from the break zone instead of searching it.
Well, that's why it's so weird that Star Sybil has a burst because she just grabs an 11 card.
Again, people have said that card is just nuts because with Sybil Athena, you're making it cost was it 2 less, so it's costing 3, and you just jam 3 of those into your deck because it's either going to cost 3 when I play it, or I mean the amount of value it gives you is just ridiculous because then it can break itself and play another card for free. So I mean, you just get so much out of that one card, and they just like, okay, we're gonna slap an EX burst on that too. It's like, I don't know.
I like it's interesting what Brad said about giving the ability of specials to cancel it. I think that would be a fun thing to experiment with because I wouldn't want them to be outright interactable because that would feel really bad. Like, oh, burst, okay, I'll just de-stole that, or I'll just bubble. But specials are so rare. I think that could be a fine middle of like, hey, if you have this very rare instance, but we'd have to test with it. I'm glad you both brought up Yasmat because to me, he's the perfect example of what I think good EX burst design is. Yeah. If Yasmat didn't have an EX burst, nobody would play that card. Nobody would pay 9 CP outright. Half the time people use him is because I don't even have to play him. If he hits a burst, it's a good effect.
It's nice. Yeah.
And in the past, it feels like they would put an EX burst on cards that were slightly weaker as a way to tune them up. Yeah. Like you mentioned with Tyro or Star Sybil, these cards are already great. And then the EX burst just makes them the no-brainer of, just jam as many as you want in there. So I like it when it's used as a mechanic to turn cards that are a little under up because I do like it as a mechanic, and it's fun when, let's say you have an empty board, you're on 5 damage, and they've got 2 forwards. If EX Burst didn't exist, the moment it went to their turn, okay, the game's over. There's no reason to play it out. But the Burst, it gives you that, okay, am I going to flip something? And sometimes, oh, no, I didn't. Or, oh, my God, I'd stop it. So I like it as a mechanic, but I definitely agree that, like, I really wish they'd be careful about what they put it on.
It's a great comeback mechanic, especially. Yeah. I had the last week where I got double fam for it and then won off of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a great mechanic. I just think it could be.
But you're also right, Brad, as the aggressor, it feels really bad to like, especially if you're trying to come back and you finally, I mean, we've all been in those games. That's an unwritten rule of this game. If you take 5 damage to 0, the first damage you hit them, it's going to be a burst. And you're just like, I spent all this time trying to get back into this game and now it just like instantly swung back to them. So you are right. And like that feeling with the Belias, as crazy as it was to watch it as a caster, I did feel for you because you can't control that. Like that was, and no offense to him, he didn't control that either. It was just, oh look, I lucked into the card that won me the game.
But I as weird as it sounds, I think what happened to Brad is exactly what I want to see with EX Burst.
Yeah,
like the crazy one-off things that are just going to happen. I would rather see that happen in games than like, okay, this guy just hit Tyro and Star Sybil or whatever else into his EX Burst on damage 3 and 4. And now he just has a huge lead and I can't catch back up. I mean, the EX Burst kind of mechanic, and again, I think you talked about this with Kyle Peters. Again, it adds kind of that strategic element that you don't have that kind of separates players. You might be set up. You're like, maybe I only swing in one time and I don't risk hitting an EX Burst or 2 or whatever it is. And I just slowly build up a lead. I'll save and make sure I keep cards in my hand. So I'm not going to give him cards back. That's definitely something players should consider is just like the pace of play that they're actually playing with. Like maybe when they finally do stabilize and they finally start building a slow lead, you slow down a little bit on dealing damage to your opponent so you don't give them the comeback mechanic to come back. Maybe you just kind of starve them out of anything before you kind of go in and swing. Now, that might feel bad for some players, but I feel like that's a whole nother dimension that a lot of people should probably start considering when they're playing their games.
That's fair. Do you guys have anything you want to add on that, or do we want to move on to Max's deck?
We can move on to my deck if we want.
Cool. Good discussion. I love that's great points. So Max, you said one of yours canceled, right? So
no, I played both of my games.
You were the one who played.
Okay, so I played the same deck per se. I played 2 different versions of the deck, and I mean the deck is called Disney Channel Original Movie Cadet Kelly, starring Hilary Duff. So I played Cadet. I played Cadets this week. The first game that I basically played almost the exact same list that the Japan that I saw top a while ago. I don't really want to talk about that list because I didn't really like that list. So I'm gonna talk about this list that's gonna come up on the screen. Travis actually sent me a deck list, and I looked at the cadet list, and he said that he had a really good like win ratio with it, and he was really liking it. And I looked at it, and I liked it a lot more. I obviously altered it, like I changed ratios, and then I added like he didn't have Aldori Emperor in there, and I put it in there because it synergizes really well with cadets.
It was hard to find him originally.
Yeah.
And like I would also I think I added another Diabolos, and then I think I added another Odin, or no, maybe I didn't add another Odin.
But you had the Golbez in there, right?
Yes, Golbez is still in there.
Golbez.
And I mean, the deck works well. Like it runs. The problem that you can come into is the way that you have to play certain cards first. And ultimately, like, I think I watched Matiski's video on talking about it was like all the Opus 13 and like so many panels, and he talked about 9 and how like you want to play 9, but then you also want to play.
He said all the best forwards are in fire, the best backups are in wind.
Yeah,
and
it's a
nine's a
cluster.
lightning card, so you're just like,
and
there's no Moogles to fix them either. Like
no, and it's I like the deck because you want to play 8, but you also want to play 8 before, and then it's just like kind of you have to like watch yourself of like how you go about doing it. But 9 is such a good card. It's like it's really like what cadets needed to be competitive, and the amount of times that I would go into 9 and then like go into my attack phase and then do some sort of like I would force them to do something, and like having in this deck having Amaterasu and having like Diabolos and stuff allows you to like do battle mechanics and like come out ahead. The thing that's really nice about 9 is the ability to lose power instead of like take damage. I find losing power is so much more I mean, it is more powerful, but there's nothing that really like there isn't. I don't think there's anything in this game that stops that.
No. Well, I was gonna say that's why it's always so much like damage. Minwu or Ishtola.
Yeah,
those cards are immune to that, but power reduction, no. And I hope, for the record, knock on wood, I hope they never print anything. Like I like having that as the mechanic. Is like that is very strong.
It also gets cards like Arden and stuff off the field too that can't be broken, but can be placed into the breakstone, so that that mechanic is around that.
Praise Arc.
Yeah.
I will say, so I faced Sophie and Dragoons this week.
Oh wow.
So I faced it got the ringer this week.
Yeah.
And the Sophie deck I lost. I won game 1. I went aggro. I went wide with 8. I went like
Cater and Jack. And that's the one I saw, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I played 9, and then basically just went wide from there. Game 2 was the opposite, and I didn't see any cards that I needed, and and he won. And game 3 was really back and forth. Ultimately, he was ahead, and then I came back and slowly like whittled his forwards away, and I was in a position where I could do something, but I drew 2 dead cards, 2 turns in a row, same 2 dead cards, and I couldn't do anything. And if that felt bad, the second game felt way better, and it's in versus Dragoons. Game 1, I went wide, I went aggro because I was like, this is an aggro deck. I have to beat it before it gets to a point where it can like outscale me. And game 2, it outscaled me and went wide. And then game 3, it was really back and forth. And ultimately, there was like one play in particular that like I don't think I would have done that he did, which was so I had 7 on the field. So for the record, my opening hand in game 3 was 3 7s. So, so I had 7 on the field, and he had the 3-drop, the Cherry Blossom Freya on the field.
Oh yeah, and 7's like the only thing in the game that could cancel
Yeah.
it.
So he Freya specials, and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna 7 that, and then he had 2 cards in his hand, and then he Cherry Blossomed again because he was already committed at that point, and I was like, all right, cool, and then I forget if it didn't kill as much as I thought it was gonna kill. Mm-hmm. So, or maybe he did. I think he would have felt better if he didn't discard 4 for it. If he would have discarded the 1 Cherry Blossom, I think it would have been fine. Because ultimately, I was attacking with 9. So he would. I think he was trying to get rid of the amount of forwards on my side of the field for 9s and ultimately, because he didn't have any cards in his hand, I just started picking him apart, and that's how I stabilized and won from there.
New 8 is great.
Yes.
I also like most of the new cadets. I like a lot. For anyone out there, and we can debate on this if you want, don't play Jack. Jack is terrible.
No,
Jack lost Max the first game.
Jack lost me the first match, and I will never play that card again.
To be fair, your opponent did not know Jack could not block for a while,
That's
so he
true.
did work for you.
Okay, so look, the card sucks. Do not play this card. That's my hot take of the podcast.
I don't know if that's a hot take or not.
The card sucks.
You can play the Propagator, which is also a 1 CP 7K forward. It's a monster. Like,
well, the whole thing is like you play the Jack, you play like Sync, and then you go and then you play 8, and then you like. It is kind of weird because you do want to play the Sync, and then you want to play the 8, or you want to play the Jack, you want to play the Sync, and then you really want to play 8, but it's just I do think that the way that you have to play these is it doesn't necessarily work as well as I wanted it to work.
Having played a lot of cadets, I can say they have good removal. That's not their issue. They just need some consistency.
Yeah.
Whether that's a backup. Because I've seen mannequins. I don't know if any of you guys have played mannequins, but having the Lady of Antiquity and the Delusional Warlock, it makes it so consistent. It's what it needed. So that's all, in my opinion, cadets is missing is some backup or something to just make them more consistent. You know, Edge made ninjas work because, hey, I remove all those colors.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think that like, while in the second deck list I played the backup cater, I really like the new forward cater more than I thought, and it's really tough because like cater's the only fire backup, so you kind of have to play it.
That's the thing. Like they have those awkward things that cater's the only fire backup, Deuce is really the only win backup.
Yeah,
that is a cadet you want to play. So they just.
Well, I mean, you play Rem.
You have Rem,
like,
at least.
Yeah.
Like we need a new Machina. We need a new Jack. Could use.
I didn't even play Machina in this time.
I would kill for a new Machina.
Right.
Yeah.
Nowadays, dude, he'd be like 10,000 power if you choose him.
He would be thick.
He'd be something ridiculous. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I thought the deck worked really well. The second, I thought they honestly worked well both, but it's just that I drew dead in 2 turns in a row, and that kind of like loses against Sophie and not being able.
Sophie and Samurais, like that's some high level stuff. So
I mean, yeah, I thought the
no slouch either. So
I thought the deck performed well for what I was running and playing against.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So we got to talk about week 4, and you guys don't have to spoil this if you don't want to, but as far as the decks you're going to be playing, are you still going to be playing kind of meme trolly stuff? And once you get to top cut, because I think most of you are basically guaranteed if you're not already in.
I will say
going for the win, or are you like, it's casually, I'm just going to play whatever.
I will say that so I didn't schedule my matches until I watched one of my opponent's matches, and then I saw that he lost, and then that automatically put me in top cut. There is one thing that I do want to talk about, and that's the whole drop and like the system and the damage system. I don't know how you can do it, But the fact that you get a perfect win for against an opponent that drops feels bad if for people that had to play the opponent earlier in the tournament. Yeah, because like I know there's no discredit to anybody that they gets dropped. People, it's just how it shook up. But there's literally like one guy in my week that in my pod that his last 2 opponents this week were both drop players, so he automatically got pushed into top cut, where he could have been fighting because he was 4-2, and then the 2 drop goes into 6-2. I mean it is what it is. But and then also like the damage the tiebreakers, it also feels bad. Like if you face 2 or 3 drop players, those are perfect wins. Like those will, because it's based off of damage taken,
right,
and not damage dealt. So, but it has to be because otherwise you're giving opponents that an advantage that if they go to game 3 they can deal more damage, and then I felt like it should be based off of like who you beat, but I don't think they have a system that's like that complicated.
For actual local qualifiers, wasn't that a factor? Like
it's a Swiss. It's a Swiss. It's strength of schedule this thing, and they're just doing round robin, so it kind of changes up a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does suck because I know you had, which like especially sucks in your situation, was that you played an opponent and you lost to that opponent, and that opponent dropped that same week.
Yeah.
So the other person that person played against got a perfect win, and you got a loss, and
that was the Sophie player.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a bummer. That's just how things shake out. But if you just win games, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm in top cut. I'm in top cut. So I played. I've already played one of my matches. I guess I won't spoil how that went. I played. We're bringing it back. We'll talk about it next week.
Sure. Brad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, which part?
Just the whole idea of like if you drop or bye weeks or any of that stuff that just gives you that free 7-0 win.
It would be hard to implement giving somebody credit for a dropped player, especially when the tournament's ongoing already. Mm-hmm. I know we've played a few tournaments near Kansas City that we've gone to, and we've had people drop, and that usually does throw the roster off. But I mean, it just, things can't be helped.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I didn't know if in Swiss, if you get a bye, if you receive a bye, if you have uneven players, whether or not that's considered a perfect win or not.
I don't.
Assuming it is.
In most round robins, it is. At least like in the RVA weeklies, it always is. And if at the when we would do our locals, because at the same time, the problem is if you don't do that, if you give them anything less than,
because then you're penalizing the person for
they had no control over it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah. I mean, I get that perspective. It just it does kind of suck for people that like had to, like, these players wouldn't have, like, if they didn't never drop. Like, there's certain, like, if you look at some of the competitive pods, like, it's just like 5 players and 4 drops. Like, and it is what it is. Like, if people don't feel like playing anymore, they don't feel like playing anymore.
Yeah.
But you're also kind of putting up, and I'm not discrediting anybody for dropping. Like, if you have to drop, you have to drop. I'm not hating on you for dropping. I'm not hating on anybody for getting wins through a drop. I got to win through a drop. I'm not hating on that. It just feels like that it's because it's a perfect win. That's and there's nothing else you can do in that situation. It just kind of it
sounds like you want to start a pitchfork mob going after everybody that is dropped from the league.
Bro, let's get the pitchfork. Where's it at?
I'm going to be the pitchfork salesman, and I'm going to watch you start a pitchfork mob.
I can't just keep burying myself here.
Look, I get what Max is saying. It's a lot like getting Phyllis and then in EX burst giving your person haste and then losing because, but I understand the frustration.
Feels
Max,
out of
I really
control.
do.
Which is, well, and I will say this, and this is just my opinion, and maybe I'm biased because it happened to Max, and Max is my friend. Were I running it, I would have a rule that says, so Max was in this unique situation where, again, he lost to someone he played pretty much as soon as the week started, and then they dropped a few days later. Whereas had he just waited and not played his game yet, he would have gotten a perfect win. So if I were running it, I would actually have a rule that if you drop within the week of play, so it's week 3, and if you drop within
drop
week
all
3,
your games,
no matter what happens or what you did or didn't play out, it's an automatic victory. Now, had it gone on to the next week and then he dropped, it's a week late.
Yeah.
Passed. But since it was only just a few days later, that was kind of like, oh, well, that's crummy. Like if I just waited a few days, then I would have gotten a perfect win. So that's just how I would.
I mean, I'm not complaining. I made top cut. It is
to give ideas though.
Yeah.
I think where this matters is not in casual division, because I think casual division is pretty cut and dry. Yeah. But competitive, they only have so many spots, and the last spot to make top cut and competitive is going to be tiebreakers.
Yeah.
And that sucks, because then it's going to be determined, okay, well, this person has so many buys, blah, 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 blah. And that's going to be a whole nightmare for them to figure out and do the math and try to do all that stuff. And that's going to feel real bad. Yeah. But I honestly, I think Rice and his crew have done a pretty good job.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that.
It's a work in progress sort system.
It's more of a workshop. Like it's just throwing around ideas of like,
ideas.
It's like, this is a bug. It's not, it's not really a bug, but it kind of is whenever you are influencing, like what Stephen said with the competitive division. Like there are players that like, they're like, okay, I didn't face any of these drop players, and now I'm getting 2-3 drop perfect wins, and you're like, you could be catapulted up into top cut. And
bug or feature?
Yeah, or purposeful feature of it. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Guys, is there anything else you wanted to shoot on before we wrap up here, or thoughts for week 4, or anything else?
Yeah, I have a question for Max.
Yeah,
if there was color fixing in cadets.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. If there's color fixing in cadets, would you run any ice variants?
Are there ice cadets?
There are ice cadets.
There are ice cadets, but I don't know if there's any ice cadets. They're type 0.
Ice, but there's no cadets that are ice. See, and that's another thing with cadets is even allow those old like Agito cadets. They don't work with any of them. Like any of those type 0 cards that were clearly designed with them, most of them don't actually interact with them in any meaningful way. I think Matitsky said this. He was like, it's like they go out, they're trying to make it as awkward as possible. They actually use these, which is just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, if they had color fixing, I think that I would play the forward cater over the backup cater. That's my
too.
That's my personal opinion.
Backup cater's not good. You just use her because she's the only backup player.
Yep. I think what they end up doing though is they probably do that starter Moogle. Yeah. And they probably reprint that, and they probably make that the color fixer. So when you're playing any sort of type 0 or class cadets or whatever it is, you can play them with any CP.
I'd be fine with just class cadet.
Unless they start doing what King already does, which is like you can already pay this with whatever it is if it's a type 0. So that'd be kind of interesting to see them do that.
King was also good.
He's the one I actually throw away the most. But yes, you always got that kind of bullet in your pocket of like, hey, surprise, you can't block kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they definitely have some old cards that could use some updating. So it's funny. Some of the stuff in this game, man, it's like we'll give them a zillion 7 cards. We'll give certain categories, if it's
another starter deck coming.
Yeah. If it's Mobius, that gets all the love in the world. But like, oh, you want 8 characters? How about another Squall, Renault, and Laguna? You can thank us later.
Yeah. Hey, that's also another thing. Like, you know what grinds my gears is that like all the good like category cards are like the same like names. Mm-hmm. They're like all the good 8 cards. Like, why do they keep printing Squall cards? Like, why do they keep printing
Squall's
Laguna?
a great 8 character, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, he is a great 8 character, but there's only you can only play so many Squalls. Like, and
category 8 is the title deck.
I mean, sure, it's a title deck, but like it could be something more. Like,
no, it's gonna be no more.
You know what?
Would it help prevent power creep though if they played more 8 cards?
For what? Like, Oh, to prevent, like, I mean,
So here's
yeah.
here's something
Pretty
interesting to
strong
think
eight
about.
cards already.
Here's something interesting to think about. David White Mage Nunez and I were talking about this, and I was complaining about the Opus 12 Stola and how strong it was. And he said, I think one of the reasons, like, they actually think it's okay to print kind of ridiculous Stolas because her name is Stola, and they know players are going to have to choose which version.
Which one do you
Now,
use?
I don't
That's
know
fair.
if that's good design or not, but it was an interesting like idea and space or whatever.
I mean, I think kind of using your Astola example, I don't think that's too far-fetched of a card because the 3-cost wind one was really good, and that was jammed into anything that played wind.
Yeah.
I think opening the design space a little more when you have name clash. So this Astola does something different. It's something that's far separated from that. So depending on what deck you could play either or, and you may not have the name clash
Which
there.
I do like.
I like that, and I wish they would do that with more cards that name clash. So having a Renoa that does one thing really well compared to another Renoa that does something else really well. Same thing with Squall, but it all seems like they're all just doling and freezing or discarding, and they all do the same stuff. So you're just like, well, I don't want to play any of these cards because the only reason you play them is because this is a Squall. So like with the new Laguna and Squall cards, you're like, well, I'm going to play this Laguna, so I guess I'm playing the Squall backup to guarantee that I get the dull freeze off or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there's like no variation there, and there's no really diversity in 8 cards.
You got to bring back the classic Squall where you drop it down. If you've got Laguna, then your opponent discards 2 cards, you discard 1 card.
Yeah, the Opus one. Yeah.
Oh, great memories.
Bring back the beast. All right, boys, that was a great session of Gang Plays Casual Week 3. We will wrap up next week with Week 4, and then we're going into Top Cut. And hopefully you guys all make it there, because otherwise you'll just be talking
Hopefully.
about watching.
I really hope I face somebody.
Yeah. And Brand's
Well,
got a good luck
see.
charm. Folks,
Get the little
thank you
move.
so much for watching. Hope you had a good time, and we will see you in Week 4. Take care.
Till next time.
See ya.
Bye-bye.